The morning light was too bright for that kitchen table. It showed every nick in the wood, every place where a homework assignment was finished, where a bill was worried over. My hands were just resting there, and on the screen of my laptop, an email. The subject line was so clinical. Transition notification. After 28 years, they let me go in an email. I just sat there. The house was so quiet. Marcus used to say our home had its own heartbeat. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards under busy feet. That morning, all I heard was the clock ticking in the next room. 28 years. I helped build that school district from the ground up. I was there when we were still using typewriters and carbon paper. I believed in it. I gave it my best years, my passion, my late nights. And they sent me a form letter like I was a piece of outdated equipment. You build a life, you see. You think you're building something solid, something that will outlast you. My whole life has been about building. My father, Reverend Samuel Whitfield, built a ministry on a foundation of faith and justice right there in Montgomery. My mother built mines in her classroom. Marcus and we built a family, a home, a partnership. For 42 years in education, I tried to build systems that would lift children up long after I was gone. You pour yourself into the work, and you come to believe the work itself is a testament, a proof of your worth. I thought about my first day as superintendent, 2008. Marcus helped me pick out my suit. He straightened my collar and said, "Eleanor Grace, you walk in there like you own the future because you're about to build it." And I tried. Through budget cuts and political storms and the sheer stubborn weight of trying to change things for the better, I was there. I was the one they called at 2 a.m. when the boiler broke. I sat with teachers who'd lost a student. I fought for programs everyone said were impossible. That company, that district, it wasn't just a job. It was my life's work next to my family. And then just like that, it was a line in an email. No phone call. No, Eleanor, let's talk. No recognition of the decades, just transition. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. The silence in the house got louder. It pressed in from the walls lined with family photos. Angela's medical school graduation, Samuel receiving his tenure, Natalie on her wedding day, all my beautiful grandchildren, Marcus with his arm around me, smiling that smile that held the whole world. All that evidence of a life built, and in that moment it felt terribly fragile. What are you when the thing you built doesn't need you anymore? When the title you carried for so long is just gone? I felt unmoored. The routine that had structured my days since Marcus passed, the morning coffee, the glance at the school board agenda, the purpose, it evaporated. I walked into my home office and the quiet was a physical thing. The phone didn't ring, the calendar was empty. I went to the grocery store just to be around people, and I saw Margaret, a woman who used to work in the district office. We made eye contact, and she looked right through me, turned her cart down another aisle. I became a ghost in my own town. A footnote. The loneliness wasn't just about the work. It echoed the bigger silence, the one Marcus left. It was as if his absence, which I had learned to carry, suddenly got heavier. I'd lost my partner, and now I'd lost my purpose, the 2 pillars of my life. So I came home, to this table, to this too bright light, and I just sat. The question hung in the air, as heavy as grief. What am I now, if not the person who built that? I read that email a 4th time. That's when I saw it. At the very bottom, in the smallest font they could manage. Your benefits, including health insurance, will terminate at the end of this month. The air left the room. You see, Marcus had always handled our finances. He was an economist. It was his world. After he passed, I leaned on the district's human resources, on the retirement plan we'd built together. It was part of the foundation. That email wasn't just taking my title. It was pulling a block from the very center of my stability. I called the number listed. A young man answered, his voice polite but distant. I told him who I was. There was a long pause, the sound of typing. "I'm sorry, Dr. Whitfield," he said. "Your severance package and final pension details are in the attached PDF." I opened it. The numbers swam on the screen. The pension was less than half of what Marcus and I had projected. There were clauses, adjustments made during budget crises I'd weathered, crises I'd solved for them. The severance was a single, insulting lump sum. 28 years reduced to a decimal point. I hung up. I looked at my hands on the table. These hands had held 1,000 student papers, had gripped a podium while fighting for a bond referendum, had held Marcus's face. Now they felt like they belonged to someone else. The first bill came due. It was the property tax notice. I opened it, and for the first time in my adult life, a cold spike of fear went through me. The math I did in my head, it didn't work. Not with those new numbers from the PDF. Not with the insurance ending. I had some savings, but Marcus's medical bills, we'd drawn from them. I sat there, a woman with a doctorate, a former superintendent, utterly bewildered by a column of numbers. That's when the identity began to dissolve. It wasn't a dramatic shattering, it was a quiet fading. I was no longer Dr. Eleanor Whitfield, who could call a meeting and change a policy. I was a 74-year-old widow staring at a tax bill, wondering if the home we built was something I could even keep. The loneliness changed flavor. It wasn't just the quiet of an empty house. It was the silence of irrelevance. My phone, which used to ring with problems only I could solve, now only chirped with advertisements. The calendar on the wall was a vast white desert. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., my body still wired for a superintendent's day, with nowhere to go. I tried to go for a walk in my own neighborhood. I passed the community center I'd advocated for. A young mother I didn't recognize pushed a stroller past me, talking on her phone. She didn't look up. I was just another elderly woman on the sidewalk. The history of these streets, the part I'd played in it, was invisible to her. I felt myself becoming a ghost in broad daylight. I thought about calling Angela or Samuel, but what would I say? Your mother, who always had the answers, is frightened by a mailbox? I had raised them to be strong, to be leaders. My pride, foolish as it was, sealed my lips. They had their own families, their own storms to weather. I could not become another burden. So I came home, to the silence, to the numbers that didn't add up. I stood in the doorway of Marcus's study, the room I still hadn't fully sorted through. His old ledger was on the desk. He could have made sense of this in a heartbeat. The grief for him, which had settled into a dull ache, flared fresh and sharp. I hadn't just lost my partner, I'd lost my navigator, and now the map itself was being redrawn by strangers in the smallest font possible. What are you when the work is gone and the numbers turn against you? You are a woman sitting at a kitchen table in a too quiet house, watching the morning light move across the wood, and wondering if everything you built was just made of sand. The silence in this house became a physical thing. It pressed on my chest in the morning. It followed me from room to room. I'd find myself standing in the middle of the kitchen, just listening to the hum of the refrigerator, wondering what I'd come in here for. My mind, which used to juggle a dozen problems at once, felt slow, thick. My children called. Bless them, they did. Angela, every Sunday evening, sharp and efficient. How are you, Mother? Are you eating? Do you need anything? I could hear the hospital sounds behind her, the life she'd built so brilliantly. I'd say, I'm just fine, baby, don't you worry about me, and we'd both pretend it was true. Samuel would send articles, thoughtful pieces about legacy and community. He was talking to the scholar in me, but the mother in me just wanted to hear his voice say, I miss you, Mom. And Natalie, my baby girl, right here in Atlanta, she'd invite me for dinner. I'd go and sit at her beautiful table and watch my grandchildren's lives flash by on their little screens. They'd hug me, quick and sweet, but their world was a whirlwind of school and sports and friends. I felt like a photograph on their wall, someone important from a story, but not part of the daily narrative. I'd come home and the quiet would be even louder. The worst was Thanksgiving. Natalie hosted. The table was full of laughter, her husband's family, so many conversations crisscrossing. I sat there smiling, passing the sweet potato casserole, and all I could see was Marcus at the head of the table, carving the turkey, telling some long story that had the children giggling. All I could feel was the empty chair beside me. I was a guest at my own daughter's table, a beloved guest, but a guest nonetheless. The matriarch, but without a kingdom to tend. You start to have thoughts, dark, quiet thoughts that come in with the evening shadows. You look at the stairs and think, if I fell, how long would it be before anyone knew? You consider the pills in the cabinet, not with intention, but with a strange clinical curiosity. How many would it take to just sleep? Then you shake yourself. You hear your father's voice from the pulpit, your mother's firm correction. But the fact that the thoughts come at all, that frightens you more than the tax bill. I stopped opening the curtains some days. The world outside, the neighbors leaving for work, the children at the bus stop. It felt like a play I was no longer in. I was just watching from the wings. My faith, my rock, felt distant. I'd open my Bible, but the words swam like those numbers on the screen. I'd whisper, Lord, I'm trying to understand. And the only answer was the tick of the grandfather clock Marcus's parents left us. Isolation, it doesn't just make you lonely, it makes you doubt your own reality. Was I ever that woman who commanded a school board meeting? Did I really help shape a generation, or did I just imagine a purpose? Without someone to reflect you back, without Marcus to say, remember when your own history starts to feel like a story you read about someone else. The very worst of it wasn't the fear or the silence, it was the shame. A deep burning shame that I, Dr. Eleanor Whitfield, daughter of a reverend and a teacher, had somehow let this happen. That I had worked so hard, built so much for others, and failed to secure my own foundation. I had followed the rules, I had been loyal, and it had led me here, to this kitchen table, in the quiet, wondering if the best of my life was now just a memory other people would eventually forget. You don't climb a mountain in one leap. You take one step and then another. My small survival started with the garden, Marcus's roses. I'd neglected them in my grief, and they were choked with weeds. One morning I put on my old gloves, the ones with the patched thumb, and I went outside. I didn't plan to stay, but the sun was warm on my neck and the earth smelled like promise. I cleared one small patch, just one. The next day I did another. It wasn't about the roses. It was about proving to myself I could still tend to something, that I could still make something grow. Then I opened the curtains. Every morning, I made it a rule. I'd stand there with my tea and watch the Johnson boy wait for the bus. I started waving. He looked surprised at first, then he'd wave back. A tiny thread of connection stretched across two lawns. The hardest and the most important was my YouTube channel, the one I started for Marcus. I hadn't posted in months. The camera felt like a judgment. But one rainy Tuesday I turned it on. I didn't talk about grief or loss. I talked about my mother's tea cakes, how she'd measure the flour with such care, saying, "Precision is a form of love, Ellie." I showed how to make them. My hands a little stiffer now, working the dough. I posted it, and the comments, they weren't just condolences, they were stories. My grandmother made these. I'm going to try this with my daughter. I had built a company for 28 years, but here in this quiet study, I was building a different kind of community. One story, one tea cake at a time. The wisdom you earn isn't the kind you find in books. It's etched into your bones by loss. I've learned that purpose isn't a title, it's a posture. It's how you bend toward the world. Being a superintendent was my purpose for a season. Now, being a keeper of stories is my purpose. My father's sermons, Marcus's terrible jokes, my mother's recipes. If I don't hold them, who will? I regret the times I missed. School plays I didn't see because of a board meeting. Quiet evenings with Marcus I sacrificed for a budget report. I thought I was building a legacy of achievement, but a legacy is built in the living room, not just the boardroom. It's built in the questions you answer, the tears you wipe, the time you give when you're tired. I was so busy building the future, I sometimes forgot to inhabit the present. So what would I tell my younger self, rushing from classroom to PTA meeting? I'd say, Eleanor Grace, breathe. Look at your children's faces. Memorize them in that light. Hold Marcus's hand a moment longer. The report can wait. The inbox will never be empty. But these people, this love is not a renewable resource. I tell her that the company, the institution, will not love you back. It cannot. It is a machine. Your family, your community, your faith, that is the living thing. Tend to the living things. To the young people building your lives, I say this. You are so beautifully, fiercely independent. You should be. But hear an old woman's truth. The family you come from is not just a backdrop. It is the foundation. Call your mother, not just for a need, but for a thought. Ask your father a question about his childhood. Record your grandmother's voice. You are not just building your own future. You are carrying a whole history in your hands. Don't wait until you're the photograph on the wall to understand its weight. To those in the middle, in the frantic, wonderful, exhausting thick of it, with careers and children and aging parents all pulling at you, I see you. I was you. Your parents are becoming quieter. They may not ask for much. Visit, not just on holidays. Sit with them. Let them tell the same story twice. They are not just reminiscing. They are trying to hand you something precious, their memory, their proof that they mattered. Receive it. It is a gift you will desperately want one day. And to my fellow elders, sitting with your own quiet, the world seems to speak a different language now, but we are not obsolete. We are the librarians of a humanity that is forgetting its own text. Share your story, bake the cake, plant the seed, wave at the child. Your very presence is a bridge between what was and what will be. Do not shrink into the background. You have earned the right to take up space. They let me go in an email. But here is the final hard-won truth. They could only let go of the employee. They could not touch the teacher. They could not dismiss the wife, the mother, the daughter of Coretta and the Reverend. They could not silence the stories. My worth was never in my signature on a document. It is in the lives I helped shape, the love I carry, the faith that even in the deepest silence whispers, "You are still here for a reason." The mountain is still there. Some days it looks steep, but I am still climbing, one small survival at a time. And from here, the view is becoming clear again. Not the view I planned, perhaps, but a view earned and paid for and truly mine.